Kia ora, good morning everyone, Rich Wong here, welcome back to the channel. Before we start this review, I would like to show you one photo first. If you have a look at this photo and pay attention to the background blur or the background bokeh. Do you like the bokeh in the background? If you don't like the bokeh at all, you think it's too busy or too distracting, now you can just click on the link to my channel and watch another of my review instead, because you are not going to like this lens. But if you think it looks okay or you actually like the bokeh, then today we are going to look at a quite unusual lens. It's the TT Artisan 250mm f5.6 reflex, which is a telephoto lens that only costs around $300 US. Before we start, I want to let you know the lens sample I used for this review was sent to me by TT Edison. I do not have to return the sample, but I also do not receive any money for this review. In fact, I would never call my video a review if a company pays me any money for their product. But I do have an affiliated link in the video description below if you want to purchase this lens. I just want to make sure everything is clear and transparent before we start this review. This TT Artisan 250mm f5.6 reflex is a mirror lens, or some people call it reflex lens. My younger viewer may not be too familiar with this type of lens because recent years there are not that many mirror lenses in the market, as this type of lens do have some limitations and some special characters that not everybody would like. But I noticed recently there are a few more mirror lenses in the market, as mirror lenses do offer some special characters that normal lenses cannot offer. By reflecting the image internally, the mirror lens allows the lens to be much smaller than a typical telephoto lens with the same focal length. The construction of the mirror lens is usually a lot simpler, which make it cheaper to make as well. The size of this lens is really compact despite its 250mm focal length. One thing you need to know is that this lens is only available in M42 mount. M42 mount lenses has no mechanical or electronic controls at all. TT Artisan choose M42 mount because it is very easy to adapt M42 mount lens to pretty much any mirrorless lens in the market using a simple and cheap mount adapter. For me, I have a M42 to L mount adapter, which I bought when I reviewed the TT Artisan 100mm bubble bokeh lens, which also uses the M42 mount. So I did this review with my Lumix L mount camera. But since it's really just a dumb lens adapter, my test result would be pretty much the same if I mount it on a camera from other brand anyway. Adding an adapter means it does increase the length and size of the lens a bit when you mount it onto the camera. But even with the adapter, the size of the lens is still about the size of a medium-sized zoom lens. Mounted on a mid-size full-frame camera like this Lumix S5, and overall it still feels pretty well balanced. Even when I mount it on a tiny camera like the Lumix S9, it still doesn't look too crazy. It is a completely mechanical lens, so it is manual focus, there's no electronic contacts. The aperture is fixed at f5.6. The only thing you can control is using the manual focus ring. The focus flow is pretty long, it's more than 180 degrees. This is really needed because even though the aperture isn't that big, the depth of field is still pretty narrow because of its long focal length. So you need a longer focus flow to allow you to adjust the focus precisely. Even with the current long focus flow, sometimes I feel like I want the focus flow to be even longer to allow me to adjust the focus more precisely. The focus ring feels smooth, and the force required to turn the focus ring is about right in my opinion. The lens has a solid metal construction, including the metal lens mount, just like most other TT Artisan lenses. And despite the metal construction, the weight is only around 380 grams, so it's not really that heavy at all. The front filter thread is 67mm. The lens has a lens hood that can be removed from the front of the lens. The lens hood is quite shallow for a lens that has a 250mm focal length. I feel the lens hood is more for providing a bit of physical protection to the front element, and TT Edison purposely keep the lens hood quite small to keep the size of the lens small rather than trying to maximize the lens flare protection. I find the front lens cap slightly loose, but it's a super minor thing, and other than that, I find the design and build quality of the lens is really good considering the relatively low price of the lens. Okay, we have a look at the image quality now. If you look at the center, sharpness is pretty good, more than acceptable. And if you look at the corner, it is slightly soft, but it's still usable as I can still see a bit of fine details at the corner. However, because the lens doesn't have adjustable aperture, so the aperture is always f5.6, so you cannot stop down the lens to improve the sharpness. The minimum focus distance of this lens is 2 meters or 6.6 feet, which is pretty far away, but because of the 250mm focal length, so the maximum magnification is not too bad. I do not have the official figure from TT Edison, but look at this photo that I shot at the minimum focus distance. I calculated the maximum magnification ratio and it's around 0.14 times, which is not bad. Image sharpness when taking photo at the minimum focus distance is also quite decent. Bokeh is usually one of the biggest reasons why people want to buy a lens like this. Instead of the normal round bokeh, you get the donut-shaped bokeh from this TT Edison lens. It is the most distinctive character of a mirror lens and one of the biggest reasons why some people love mirror lens. I myself quite like this kind of bokeh as it creates an unusual look to my photo or video, but at the same time, I don't think I would want every single one of my photo to have bokeh like this. Look at these test photos, distortion is quite minimal, and it is the same for vignetting. I only see a tiny amount of light fall off near the corner, definitely not enough to cause any distraction. I noticed the contrast would drop quite a bit when there is a strong light source, and actually sometimes not really that strong light source in front of the lens, and the lens hood doesn't actually provide much lens flare protection at all. I can see some pretty noticeable lens flare very easily. But at the same time, pretty much all the mirror lens that I've tried previously would have below average lens flare performance, so this TT Edison lens isn't actually worse than the other mirror lens that I've tried before. Because I cannot stop down the lens, there's no sun stars at all in all the images captured using this lens. Chromatic aberration performance seems to be pretty good. I have not noticed any serious color fringing at all with all the photos I shot using this lens. On the other hand, focus breathing is pretty serious. I cannot do my usual 1 meter to infinity focus breathing test because the minimum focus distance of this lens is 2 meters, but even just from 2 meters to infinity, I can see some pretty massive focus breathing. But does it matter? Probably not, since I don't think too many people would like to do focus pulling when shooting video using this lens. This TT Edison 250mm f5.6 reflex is really quite a restrictive lens. With the fixed f5.6 aperture, it isn't fast, so you cannot really shoot photo at night, not handheld anyway. But with this long 250mm focal length, and you cannot stop down the lens to get more depth of field when you want to. For example, if you want to take some telephoto landscape photo, but you need more depth of field to cover things in different distance, you cannot do that with this lens. Without autofocus, if you are someone who has never shot with a manual focus lens before, it's definitely not the first manual focus lens that I would recommend you to pick up as well. Having said that, since we are usually shoot with mirrorless cameras these days, it makes things a lot easier. The electronic viewfinder with tools like peaking or punching allows you to manual focus a lot easier and also more precise as well. In-body image stabilizer make it easier to handheld and shoot sharp photo even at slower shutter speed. So if you are someone who has tried a mirror lens back in the DSLR days and found it was impossible to use, maybe it's time to give it a try again, as you quite likely be a lot happier with the results that you got. In terms of image quality, this is not the best lens that I have tested, not even the best from TT Edison, but you do have to understand mirror lens usually just don't deliver the best image quality. So if we compare it with the other mirror lenses in the market or some of the older mirror lenses, I think the image quality of this TT Edison lens is easily as good, if not slightly better than most other mirror lens in the market. So what I'm trying to say is, this is not a typical telephoto lens. It has a lot more restrictions than a modern telephoto lens. Mainly focusing a 250mm isn't an easy task, but if you're happy to put in some efforts to learn and try to master this lens, then it is a really affordable, really compact telephoto lens that allows you to create some really unique images that a normal telephoto lens can't give you. I myself have some more overseas trip coming up later this year, and I am seriously considering bringing this lens with me as well, as I do want to have a telephoto lens to capture some photos with a long focal length, and I do really love the donut bokeh from this lens. So with this TT Edison lens, I can easily fit it into my camera bag.